So I'm just going to ask you one more so that we'll have lots of time for other people too. So now you've gone from nightmare to dreams and hopes. So what are your dreams and hopes for the future of the movement? And think about it in terms of the work that you do and how you'd like that to look going forward. Or think about it however you want to think about it.
I'll go first this time.
All right.
Woo! So for me, that's a really easy one, that everybody is really actually invited to the table, and it goes beyond that. There's that Malcolm X quote that I always mess up, and you'd think at this point I would know it because I always mess it up, but it's the quote that don't invite me to the table if you're only going to feed me scraps. I know that's totally wrong, but the essentialness of that, right? Don't invite us all to the table if we're not going to be equal partners in it. So it's like, again, getting into that power dynamic, the ways that we want to sit, the tokenism, getting away from that, so that my hope is that everybody is fully invited to the table to be their full selves, and that the voices are heard, and that we can really create policy and create a community that is inclusive of everyone. And I think that the RJ movement is the umbrella to do that.
So my hope is specific to my work and specific to the work that I've been doing for the last 10 years. So I joke sometimes that I've spent my career just following the movement to repeal the Hyde Amendment from organization to organization. And quite seriously, the last jobs that I've had when I've made decisions about where to go, it was based on where did I think I would be most effective in removing the barriers to affordable abortion for everyone, for low-income folks, for undocumented folks, for folks in prison, for, at every level of health care, removing the barriers to affordable abortion. And that was where I decided to spend my work and my time. And my hope, thinking a little bit about history, I read just a couple of months ago, Loretta, I found yet another piece of writing of yours I hadn't read. I was so happy. But you were talking about how 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago, Black women reproductive justice leaders called for a campaign to get rid of the Hyde Amendment, which is what denies Medicaid coverage for abortion, and they were shut down. And they were shut down by folks who said it wasn't possible, it wasn't politic. Wait, you want to talk about poor folks and abortion? Like, no. And they were shut down. But they didn't stop fighting for it. And for more than 20 years, it was people of color, it was queer women, it was reproductive justice advocates who kept the fire burning to say that this does not have to be the way things are. And it doesn't matter that the people who say that they're on our side in terms of our members of Congress continue to endorse this policy, right? Even those who say that they're all in for abortion rights, but oh, wait, folks on Medicaid, right? That's different. So my hope is that we can honor the foremothers who've been asking for this, who've been demanding this for decades by making it happen. And I think that we can.
Yeah, great.
I think my hope, I have a couple different hopes. One, much to what you said earlier, well, several innuendos towards sex, I want to center desire. I want to center the power of desire. As a liberatory frame, many of us have never even had that option as being exploited, being used for reproduction for the basis of labor, and not relying on enslavement. Slavery in this country was solely based on reproduction, based on labor, and didn't honor, value the lineage, the tradition of desire as a liberatory frame. I want to center healing, and let me be specific around the collective healing and remembering the memory of traditions that have been that have been dismissed through colonization, right? So in the relocation and the displacement, in the co-optation of our medicinal herbs and traditions as Black and Indigenous people in this country, as Indigenous people in this world, we are not connected to memory. We are not given the right. We are criminalized for doing traditions right down to midwifery, right? If it's not inside of a white, sterile room, very much based in a white supremacist lens of Western-based medicine. So I'd like to center the role of healing and wellness that really is about transcribing, remembering our relationship and lineage to honor the healing and wellness traditions we have as survival. and really see those as resiliency strategies, not something that we do because we do them, but see them as something that we're doing is for our safety and survival. I do have some concerns about leadership, like who gets the tools, who gets to be leaders. We haven't mentioned the nonprofit industrial complex yet on this panel. I think it's complicated. As an executive director of an organizing center that's constantly being threatened to lose funding and not exist, some of us have taken executive leadership roles purely out of the basis, not because we studied how to be an ED, but we were just like, okay, let's like take the hit and get pummeled from funders, the state, and the police on how we take care of our own, and use this, not the nonprofit industrial complex as a destination, but as a bridge to get us to the other side of the work and the liberation we're trying to get to. So I definitely don't want to get confused about the role of organizational structures. However, that being said, who's in the room leading organizational structures? We are surely missing out, right? We have youth-led organizations that are led by adults. We have queer, trans organizations that are led solely by cis queer women, or cis queer, cis gay men. So how are we looking at, even in the microcosm of New York City, where everybody says everything is going on and everything is revealed and happening, there's hardly any trans women of color, gender nonconforming people of color running organizations or agencies for, by, and about queer and transgender nonconforming people of color. So I think we're at a point, though, in our leadership. I'm concerned about, though, how we share skills and how we share tools, and what's considered leadership, what's considered who should have the power to make decisions about where our organizing traditions are going and where our organizations are going. So I have some big questions for the reproductive justice movement in particular, since it holds all these intersections, is where are we looking at leadership and all the different ways that we're building power for folks to access leadership, and unpack the different ways we're going to build movement together. And finally, I need to know that when we're talking about the prison industrial complex and reproductive violence, that we're going to talk about the medicalization of our bodies. And that if we're not going to talk about the testing and experimentation of people institutionalized, people with disabilities, people who are incarcerated, and queer and trans people of color in particular that continue to be tested and experimented with this idea that there is the promotion or the beginning of a gay gene and that we can genetically be removed, this is a problem. So if we're not going to talk about the bioethics as a safety precaution and not talk about the role of medicine and scientific racism as an extension of policing, we are missing out on something. And as my indigenous organizer friends have told me, we missed something when we weren't fighting against the patenting of seeds, and we sure as hell are missing something and not fighting against the patenting of DNA. So what will we do in understanding the policing and surveillance of DNA as a structural racism and continued colonization of not only our genetic makeup, but the lineage to our traditions and memory?
As I said earlier, older women have not only given me advice, they've given me dreams. They've passed them on. And one of my dearest friends is a woman named Shulamith Koenig. Koenig, I never can get her name right. Israeli-American who was asked to leave Israel because she fought on behalf of the Palestinians in the 1960s, you know? And I was with her the other day because she's 86 years old. And so she gives me a dream. She says, I want human rights to become a way of life. Not a slogan, not a framework, not a body of law, but we take it just as the way we are in a human rights way. And what that means specifically is that we've got to build the moral, the social, and the economic power to get our government to ratify human rights treaties. We've got to make human rights education as common as teaching children about the Pledge of Allegiance. you know? We've got to elect politicians telling us how many children they're going to send to college, not how many they're going to send to jail, you know? We've got to understand that we cannot protect human rights by violating human rights, you know? And finally, I think that one of the things that, like you said, concerns me is the competition among identity politics right now. And my understanding, and I don't ask it to be yours, it's just how I see the world, is in many ways we're concerned about the culture war. You know, the attacks on women, the attacks on LGBT, and I swear I can remember all those names you say, queer, gender nonconforming, two-faced, two-spirit. See, I can't even say it all. But anyway, everybody. And we are rightly concerned about the cultural war, but we will never have any serious struggle against neoliberalism and capitalism, any class war, if we don't understand that the race war prevents us from even coming together. And so people who are so naive, and I know I'm speaking to some of you, who think that somehow there's going to be this worker solidarity just by working on economic issues is going to solve America's problems. They don't understand the genocide and the enslavement that is America. You know? And so I invite you in to that conversation, because no one can talk to me about cultural struggle or class struggle if they don't help me understand how they also understand genocide, enslavement, imperialism, you know? Because it ain't just about your equal opportunity to oppress. That's what I want to say.